I'd like to call the meeting back to order from closed session. We'll now have a Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Matsuoka.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tenemos interpretación al español por si alguien gusta escuchar la reunión en español. Gracias.
Headsets for the hearing impaired are available. Please indicate if you should need a headset. Next, we'll have no announcements out of the closed session action, so we'll have the superintendent's report.
I would like to share that myself and Principal Kelly Fresh and 2 teachers from Adams Elementary will board a flight at 6:30 a.m. tomorrow and fly to beautiful Kansas City, where it will be 7 degrees when we land. And we are going there to receive the ESEA award that is one of only 2 schools in the state of California. So congrats to Adams, and we'll bring back pictures and things to hang on the school and just really get the good word out about the team at Adams and how they've been working hard for students for a long, long time. And then my second superintendent comment, probably many of you saw this in the media. So we had Joby Nunez pass away, and I never had the privilege of meeting him, but when his name came up in cabinet, there was just like oohs and ahs. I mean, he's just a legend. He coached across all of our high schools. Really just a generational figure in the field of athletics, and spent his career in Santa Barbara Unified. So as is our custom, let's just take a moment of silence in honor of Joby Nunez. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
And we're happy to report that we have a student board report. Ms. Carey, are you going to introduce the speaker?
I would like to at this time invite the students from Dos Pueblos up here to the podium, and where they can give their own introductions. But we're really happy to be kicking off these student board reports. You'll see a series of them beginning tonight and in ensuing board meetings. And I'll just remind everyone that the foundation for these meetings, just come right back around here, here you go, come right here, was our student voice study session that we held in the fall, where we opened the conversation. And we started a dialogue about what things were working well on sites, what things that students themselves thought that with some focused attention and audience with the board and the supportive resources that we could bring to bear on maybe an identified area of growth, area for growth, what we might be able to do together in the leadership fashion. So this is the first of 4 student board reports that we'll be hearing this semester. So without any further ado, here are the students from Dos Pueblos.
Good evening, school board, Mr. Matsuoka, Mrs. Carey. We are here from Dos Pueblos High School as a part of the Student Voice Committee to present our student report. My name is Sonny Grebel, and I'm the ASP president.
Hi, I am William Caird. I am the ASB representative.
And I am Lindsay Fisher, and I'm a social media commissioner. All right. So we're going to start with our statement of identified need. And our need is to have a schedule that allows students to take more electives and courses of choice throughout the year. So basically, as Ms. Carey has mentioned, Will, Sonny, and I went to a board meeting, and we were part of a group called the Student Voice Committee at our school. And we looked at our school and realized that there was an issue. There are a lot of classes that our school offers that students don't get the chance to take due to many programs that we're in and different class schedules that they are required to take. So many electives and different opportunities were being missed out on. And coincidentally, the admin at Dos Pueblos High School also had the same idea, and we're talking about it separately from us, so we thought that was kind of exciting. We've been meeting weekly with ourselves and the other group at DP, and we've been reviewing different schedules of other schools and different options that we could look at to change our schedule. We also have been talking with other students at our school about their opinions on whether or not they would take other classes and whether or not they want to have a different kind of schedule that would allow more opportunity. So yeah, we wanted to have most of our school's opinions heard in voices, and that is what we did for this program. Now going on to the background. So at DP, we have a 6-period bell schedule, and then we have modified block on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We have, with increased graduation rate, UC and state college requirements, students are having a hard time fitting into their regular schedule electives, career technical education pathways, or CTE pathways, and other courses of choice. I can definitely verify that this is true. I have had to take many classes at CC to be able to fulfill my A to D requirements for graduation because I wanted to be able to take electives during my high school experience. I'm in theater at DP. I'm also in DP Media, which are 2 classes that I enjoy thoroughly. It's probably my favorite thing about being about the school. And I had to take classes, both my history classes at CC to be able to do that, and I took a math at CC this year. The traditional 6-period day does not allow enough opportunities for students to take electives and expand their interests. And students feel a lot of stress due to schedules that are heavy and have no opportunities for enrichment or electives in their schedules, which I can verify again is very true. I have a lot of friends that have taken really hard classes and AP classes on top of each other, which can lead to a lot of stress and pressure to the students in their everyday schedules. So our statement of desired outcome is just what our goal is for this change. We want access to more electives mostly, and we want to create more well-rounded students that can learn new skills. We want to create more opportunities for special education students, AVID, DP Engineering Academy, English learners, athletes, and really any other programs at DP that require a lot of classes in your schedule that don't allow for other opportunities. We also would like option for higher level and dual enrollment classes as incentive for hardworking students to take classes on campus, because colleges could really look at that and that could help students who really want to get into those Ivy League schools. We also want more CTE pathways and most of all lower stress for all our students, which should always be a goal. And with having electives and other opportunities for students to take, could de-stress the students by having classes that aren't so strenuous and academic.
All right, so this is the new college career indicator, and this is basically how the state of California determines whether or not a student is considered college ready, which is kind of better displayed on the next slide. So as you can see here, there's like 3 different main ways to determine whether or not a student is considered college ready. And the 3 tests in the middle, the SMART or balance, the dual enrollment, and the advanced placement has been kind of the standard for the past 2 years. And with this new schedule, we want to be able to include the A through G requirements and the CTE pathways. So CTE pathways, like at DP, is our engineering academy and our culinary arts and media arts and other classes. And there's just not enough support there to endorse these students to take these classes because they're more focused on taking the high-level AP classes. For example, I have a passion in culinary arts and I really enjoy it, but due to like my schedule, I wasn't able to complete the coursework for it, so I was only able to take 1 year. So with this new schedule, we'd be able to accomplish more of this, and therefore more students would be considered college ready than if they were just able to take the tests.
So to verify everything we were looking into was true, we decided to survey 593 students at our school, and the students we surveyed were part of AVID, English learners, and the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy. We selected to survey these groups because they're 3 of the most impacted groups coursework-wise, meaning that these programs require other courses outside of A through G requirements as a part of their program. And what our surveys showed were over 70% of AVID students, over 80% of English learners, and 60% of DPA students felt like due to the coursework and requirements, they were unable to take electives in their schedule. Further on, we found that over 65% of AVID students, over 46% of English learners, and over 75% of DPA students felt like they were unable to fulfill their A through G requirements without going out of school by taking city college classes, summer school classes, or zero-period classes. And once again, over 56% of AVID students, 61% of English learners, and 76% of DPA students felt like they would take an elective 7th period if the option was presented to them. Personally, I'm a part of the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy, and I've had to take 3 summer school courses, 2 online courses to be able to take my engineering academy, and I also play in the jazz band. So in order to be able to do these both, I've had to take multiple summer school courses and zero-period classes. So what this data means to us is that students have to take classes during their summer, some time that we would like to consider a mental rest and a break for students. They're having to go out of their way and take classes that go into their free time. They're taking classes before school even starts at 7 a.m. during what we consider our zero period. They're taking college classes in evenings after school, and they're taking classes in their free time, which we would consider before school, at lunch, maybe during nutrition, after school, once again during our mental rest and downtime as students. They don't have as much opportunity to fill our CTE pathways or elective courses of choice, and students show that they would enroll in more classes if given the opportunity to do so during their school day. So this is our current schedule at Dos Pueblos High School. On Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, we have a standard 6-period schedule, and on Wednesday and Thursday, we have a alternating block schedule. The key takeaway from this is, based on our current schedule, students are limited to 6 periods in the hours of a standard school day. So one of the first schedules we looked at of interest is Lompoc High School's bell schedule. Pros we found were that there's more opportunities for electives as they have 7 periods in the standard 8 to 3 school day. On Wednesdays, they do have a late start, which has been shown to be beneficial to students in their success. And some cons we found are that with a 48-minute period, it's hard to get a lesson in. Maybe a more intricate and in-depth planning in like labs and sciences and stuff would be a little challenging with that. They also do not have a seminar in their schedule, which is one of our biggest support programs here at Dos Pueblos High School. We have seminar on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and a lot of students use that as a key support system. One of the next schedules we looked at was St. Anna's High School's schedule. They have an alternating block schedule throughout the entire year. So on the one day they'll have 1-3-5, and on the next day they'll have their 2-4-6. And then they have the 7th period option Tuesday through Friday from 2 to 3 o'clock. This again also gives another opportunity for the 7th period class in a standard school day, giving students more opportunity for electives and courses of choice. Some cons we found were it's hard to follow the flipping of classes, as on Monday one week you'd be starting with your odd classes, and on Monday the next week you'd be starting with your even classes. And this too has no embedded seminar. One of the last schedules we looked at was San Marcos High School schedule. They have a 4x4 block schedule, and this actually presents the most opportunity for classes. In a standard school year, you can take what's the equivalent of 8 classes. This gives you a long class period time, which is good for lessons, and you could really get into some in-depth learning there. And they also have Royal Time, which is our equivalent to what seminar is. So we would be able to continue what is one of our larger support programs. Some of the cons we found were that AP and IB testing could get a little tricky if during your first semester you take an AP or IB test. If that AP IB test comes up in the second semester, it would be hard to remember all the knowledge that you learned. If you do miss a day, it's a lot of learning to make up and stuff to get back together. And the long classes could be hard to get through, and it might be a little complicated.
So for the reflection and evaluation, we just want to hit a couple main points. We want to make sure that you're aware that this schedule doesn't, that the new schedule will benefit those that take a lot more academic heavy classes and allow them to develop their passions. We also want to make sure that DP students want this and that they would benefit from this. This would also make students more students would be deemed college ready. and that this could all be possible with a schedule with 7 or more classes. And for some next steps that we would like to take, we want to make sure that students are involved, maybe include some more people in our surveys. We want to make sure parents and staff are also aware of this potential schedule. We want to make sure that it is fiscally possible, so we want the district to do some research. We also want to present this to the DPHS site leadership team, introduce the schedule options to all stakeholders, and commit to a new battle schedule that optimizes opportunity to students.
At this time, we'd like to open it up for any questions or feedback.
Well, thank you for that very in-depth and obviously well-researched report. I'll open up to any questions to the board. Questions or comment? Ms. Munoz? No? Ms. Ford?
First of all, thanks for an amazing report. When I read the documents over the weekend, I was so impressed with how thoughtful, how collaborative, how intelligent, and how empowered it looks like you have been, and that means a lot to me. You did say that you thought it would be a good idea to talk to staff and to parents and to the leadership team. Have you had any conversation with your principal or other teachers? Did you get any feedback throughout the process from adults?
So throughout the process, we've been working directly with Mrs. Hemsley, our assistant principal, and Mr. Woodard, the principal at the high school, and he's been helping us through this process and giving us ideas on what he thinks would possibly be the best. And maybe in our next steps, we would take it to PTSA meetings and see what parents' opinions are on this.
Thank you.
Ms. Capps?
Yeah, I want to echo that just such an impressive way in which you approach this. I'm just curious because about your research. How did you survey the students? It was very thorough. I'm just curious what your methodology was.
Would you like to?
No. I don't actually. Yeah, that's all you.
Okay. We sent out Google Forms to all of the programs, so we made it a part of just the day. We asked the teachers to ask this English learner students and the DPA students and the AVID students to just fill out a quick Google form and answer some of the questions on our form.
Super. And my last question is, what in this process was there one thing that surprised you?
The most surprising thing to me was how interested all of the students actually were. We thought it was just something that maybe we were wanting, but when we sent out those Google Forms to see such astonishing results and high percentages of students that would actually take a 7th period elective. Thank you.
I just have one more question. Can you said a couple of times regarding the seminar time. Can you just elaborate on that? Because you said that's a really support for you, and you talked about it also in comparisons to the other high schools.
So our seminar, we have multiple centers. So we have Writing Center, which helps students in their English classes, and we have Math Center, which helps with math and all that. And it's a time where it's 45 minutes out of, I think about 45 minutes out of our Wednesday and Thursday, where you can go to these different centers, or you can just stay in your seminar class and work on homework and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? Ms. Munoz?
I also appreciate all the, the inclusiveness with including the English language learners, and then being able to, take more electives and excel, and include it during this normal school day. Because students also have jobs, and like you said, they also need downtime and study time. So I appreciate the thoroughness.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Carey, any comments? You are.
I'll make just a couple of comments. I'm just really impressed by the student board report and it being the first one. Thank you for going first. There are dynamics, with going first with anything, and this is kind of a reboot. We had put the student board report on kind of a hiatus because we wanted to shift away from what was before just kind of a sharing of information and school announcements, which was also interesting, but wasn't nearly something as deep as what we just all experienced, and as thoughtful and as really constructive toward improving our practices. I'm really excited about the fact that adults on the campus, to Ms. Ford's question, that adults on the campus and students on the campus are having a conversation in parallel and are starting to talk to each other about the same topic. I think the work that you've done really on behalf of moving this conversation forward, think about that data that was gathered and how valuable that will be to the dialogue overall, is just really, really incredible and a really big contribution. So I just, again, want to echo the appreciations of the board members on behalf of district staff and leadership, and great job.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Ford.
Ms. Carey, I always think it's great to make sure that students understand how and when we'll get back to them. So what would be your next steps on this?
Well, I will always work through site leaders, and that will be how you sort of understand what comes next. It would be most authentic for me to be working through and with Mr. Woodard on that. We are in close communication about this very topic. And so we'll kind of circle up, students and site leaders and myself, to explore next steps. There has been a conversation with the site leadership team. I saw that as one of your bullets on one slide. So that's something to just kind of bring current, and the students' understanding is, how did that conversation go? So you as students understand what some of the adults on the campus what questions they're starting to ask, and what observations are being made. So there's a conversation afoot, and I think part of my role is to just make sure, as you pointed out in your presentation, that all stakeholders are aware of that conversation. I would say that right now it's a kind of an exploratory phase. Some of the things that you raised as next steps, like explore the fiscal sort of feasibility of some of what's being proposed. Two of those sample bell schedules would have a significant fiscal impact, and one of them would have virtually neutral fiscal impact. So that doesn't feature prominently in this presentation, but we know as we look at all of the data related to this conversation that's a significant factor. So just making sure that all parties have all the information as we take the conversation forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to present and share our research and ideas.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. So next we'll move to board comments and correspondence. Board, any comments? Ms. Capps?
Yes, I have two. After the board passed the climate change resolution last meeting, I heard from quite a few people, members of the environmental community, but also teachers and some parents, especially at the school where I'm at often. And so what I've done is just invited people to our next subcommittee meeting. When they say want to get involved, you say, come join our meeting, which is Thursday here. And we're going to be looking at our board policy of green schools, which is quite outdated, 2010. So it was quite exciting to have that kind of response. Second thing is I had a really sweet experience with the Munoz family in Santa Barbara, 4 generations of Dons. It was brought to my attention that the grandmother, her maiden name is Berber, Pauline Caroline Berber. It was her deepest regret that she never received her diploma from 1959 because she had left school partway in her senior year because her mom was dying of cancer when she was 16. And so then after her mom died, she went back and she finished her credits, but never got to do the walk. I'm not sure why, or never received her diploma. So fortunately, through the office, just recently received it, or her kids figured out how to do that. And rather than just give it to her, they decided to have a big party, a graduation ceremony. I got invited to it very last minute. I didn't really know what I was walking into, and it was stunning. I wish you would all have been there because it was about 50 people of this family, 4 generations, like I said. Mostly Dons, some San Marcos, all dressed up. They had in the backyard right near Peabody in their house, it looked like a graduation ceremony. They had Dons banners. They had it all, they had a podium. They had everyone, and then they told us to come at 5. She came at 5:30, and they played the Hail to Thee. She walked in just streaming of tears, had to compose herself. And they had a cap and gown for her, a Dawn's cap and gown, and they had a full ceremony of her kids speaking. I was able to present her with the diploma, and she just she spoke about the value of education and sticking with something, and you could see that those values had carried through her family and her grandkids and great grandkids. It was just a stunning display of family love, and just the fact that it was oriented in our schools and how much that diploma means for so many students and their families just brought it home to me in a very poignant way, in a very surprising way. Again, I didn't quite know what I was having the privilege of being a part of, but I'm so glad I did. So thanks.
Thank you for sharing. I also wanted to share that over the weekend, the Martin Luther King weekend, I had the opportunity to attend several events, and one of which was the essays and poets and poems that were written by some of our students, and DP and Roosevelt was well represented. So I certainly want to congratulate all of the students who participated in that activity. And I was part of the poets, and we had from Miss Barr's class, I believe, and Miss Bias class. There were several of the winners came from that class, so I certainly want to give a shout out to those teachers who are supporting those teachers in, raising their voice through their poetry and through their essays. And they did it a little bit differently. Normally, the first place winners are presented on the day of the Martin Luther King, and so it often gets hidden in the middle of that. So this year, what they did was have it in two separate ceremonies, so you could really focus on the words and the poets and poems that were presenting the information. So it was really delightful to be able to focus on those who were presenting those poems. And then the next day at De La Guerra Square, before the march, they had the essay winners come and talk about it. So it was really enlightening. You could see the student voice. It was inspiring to see them, and they were standing up there. And when they're walking up there, they were a little shy, but they were very confident in their work. And so we just wanted to give a shout out to them and just to appreciate the teachers for supporting them in that effort. And we'd like to see more students come out and participate, and share their voice in terms of that. So, okay, Ms. Ford.
Thanks, Madam Chair. As I mentioned, I was really gratified over the weekend, and I think it was about students. As those of us who are educators know, the job is often very frustrating, very disappointing. Sometimes you wonder if you're accomplishing anything at all. And then something happens where you see that the students have done something marvelous, something really great. And I felt that way over the weekend when I read the report from the Dos Pueblos students, as I mentioned before, the empowerment, the independence, the creative thinking, the collaboration. And I also was able to experience that at Santa Barbara High School with the Music of the Night performance on Sunday afternoon. This is a musical review that's produced, created, written, directed, and performed all by students. And it just is one of those, another example of those great experiences where students are independently creating their own learning. Nothing is more powerful.
Thank you. So moving to C9, we don't have any public comments that have been submitted, so, okay. So we'll move on to D, accepting of donations. Do I see a motion? Do I hear a motion?
Yes, I move to accept with gratitude the donations.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll move to our consent agenda. Are any items that the board would like to pull? I don't think we've seen it.
I have none.
Okay. Do I hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Ms. Ford? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Ms. Moniz, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We move right along here. So we're going to move to our action agenda. So the first is the board action on discipline education. Ms. Capps.
Yes, I'd like to move action on case number 201819-08. In the recommendation for an expulsion with enforcement suspended 2 semesters, which ends June 2019.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The next one.
Next would be, I'd like to move forward on action of case number 201819-23. with the motion of expulsion with enforcement suspended 2 semesters, which ends January 2020.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Ms. Ford? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 3.
Yes. And for moving forward on reentry from expulsion, case number 201617-08.
Do I hear?
Moving forward, terms of expulsion was full expulsion for 2 semesters, which ended on June 2017 and completed on June 2019.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, and in the case of readmission from expulsion of 201718-20, which is the full expulsion, which was completed on January 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And in the case for reentry from expulsion 201718-21, full expulsion, which ended on January 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And moving forward on reentry from expulsion, case number 201718-23, full expulsion, which ended January 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And 2 more here. Moving forward on reentry from expulsion, case number 201718-28, full expulsion, which ended January 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, moving forward on reentry from expulsion, case number 201718-35, suspension expulsion for 2 semesters, which ended January 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Cass, for that.
Very good.
Okay, moving on to 9, approval of instruction support specialist job description. Dr. Becchio.
Good evening, board members. Tonight, we've submitted to you a job description for an instructional support specialist, and I want to just give you a little bit of background. About 6 years ago, we had implemented a group of TOSAs, Teachers on Special Assignment. That was, the landscape back then was really the implementation of Common Core, or actually the coming implementation of Common Core, and what those the Teachers on Special Assignment were hired really as a broad position to really do whatever's needed in that era of getting us up to speed on Common Core, adopting materials, getting courses created. Depending on the subject area, those TOSAs really kind of defined their role and got working in those core content areas. What we've seen happen is now we have a more sophisticated need around instructional support. Common Core is fully implemented, and we have presented to you what we are considering a reboot of the Teacher on Special Assignment program. What we would be doing is actually eliminating the TOSA positions and however adopting this new instructional support services position with the job description, and then opening those positions for teachers to be able to apply to those. Any questions?
Ms. Ford?
Yes, so are you describing then that all of the current TOSAs would, I guess, sort of receive some sort of notice that their job no longer existed and they would be welcome to apply for this position?
I believe 4 of them? 5 of them, and then our literacy coaches would stay in place, and one other coach, the ELD, would stay in place. So our science, English language arts, and our math would actually be placed back in the classroom, but also have the opportunity to apply for the new job description, and many of them may actually do that.
And then be on an equal I guess, playing field with other people who might want to apply for these jobs.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Any further questions, board? No? Do I have a motion to approve the instructional support specialist job?
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Vecchio. Dr. Vecchio, you stay up there. Approval of the Technology Integration Support Specialist job description.
Okay, and kind of along the same lines, we have currently, I believe it is 6 tech coaches. These were positions, these are also teachers on special assignment as tech coaches. This program was created, I really couldn't figure out how many years ago. I want to say around that same era, 6 so years ago. And they were really created to really build our capacity across our entire district in the area of technology integration. And I think it's probably a good moment to really recognize the work that happened in that space. And it was a really intricate program of tech coaches, tech integrators that really inundated the site with professional development so our teachers and other staff could be very well versed in implementation of technology integration into instruction. And so what we've seen is that really has become a core function of what teachers do, technology integration. And so this is also another reboot in the area, though, of technology. And so we no longer see the need for the 6 instructional tech coaches. This would be a savings to the district. However, we do believe that there is still a need for 2 instructional technology integration support specialists, is what the job description before you will state, and that those would provide support to the to the site tech integrators. So there'd be 1 in secondary, 1 in elementary, and there are site tech integrators still, and they would provide support to those integrators and in other spaces, in classrooms, et cetera. So that's what we feel the need is in that space at this point.
Ms. Ford?
Thank you. Does every school have a tech integrator?
Yes.
Okay. And is
Actually,
that
the old model, there are many people who have served as tech integrators over the years. And then so there still exist as they got that experience. I believe the model, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, is there will be a tech integrator at the site, though. Oh, multiple ones? Okay, so multiple at the secondary sites and then 1 at each elementary site.
Thank you.
This position would also be really responsible for staying current on technology, just things that come forward as good practices in the area of technology and things that we could possibly implement, and being the experts in that area, doing some research around what could be implemented in the future.
Additional questions? Do I hear a motion to approve the Technology Integration Support Specialist job description?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Thank you,
very much.
Dr. Vecchio. So we're moving on to F11, Special Services Agreement with Atkinson, Adelson, Loya, Rudd. Is it Rudd?
Rude.
Rudd, okay. Romo pertaining to charter schools. Ms. Chite.
Thank you, board members. Good evening. As you know, that we've had several charters petition our district in the past year and a half. And so we just need a little extra help on the legal issues that come along with that, and make sure that we follow all the rules and make sure that we hit all the deadlines. So I'd like to propose that this be approved by the board for an 18-month-old period for AALRR.
Any questions from the board?
Well, yeah, can you speak a little bit more, because I think this is something of interest to a lot of community members of what's happening with charters. I've gotten a couple questions. So just, if you could just speak a little bit more to this capacity that's added with these lawyers.
Well, I know that with the charter schools, they have lately consumed a great deal of my time. And there's a lot of ed code out there, and it's nice to have someone direct you and make sure that you dot all your I's and cross all your T's, because if you don't, you can get yourself and the district into trouble. And we want to do we want to do what's right and make sure that we do follow all the rules and make sure that everything is followed to the word of Ed Code, and so that it's a fair process for both sides.
Sounds good to me, but just to make it practical, so when a petition comes in, this firm would review rather than,
The firm would be there to answer questions. You may remember on the January 15th, the board approved us someone that will help us with our processes on reviewing petitions each year, and our FUAs and our MOUs, and how we do our fiscal accountability of those charters and review. That's getting to be a very hot topic up in CDE, and we need to make sure that our charters are doing what they should be doing and we're doing what we should be doing, and see if our processes are good. The attorney is more to make sure that when we do get petitioned and we approve or deny, that we are following every single step that we should be, because there's very short periods of time. There's 30 days, 60 days, then you appeal and all of this. So it's complicated, and I just want to make sure that I hit every one of those deadlines.
Do I hear a motion for special service agreement with Atkinson and so forth? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Ms. Ford, do I hear a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Thank you.
passes. We traditionally take a break between our action items and report items. Board, what's your will? We're pretty, we don't need one, we'll keep on going. We'll keep it moving. All right, so draw on to our report and discussion agenda. Presentation of the Santa Barbara Unified District's annual financial report for the period ending June 30, 2018, and the required communication letter. Ms. Chate.
So I'd like to introduce Shiloh Gillespie. She has been with Vernick, Trine, and Daly since 2000. She's been our managing partner since 2016, 2017?
Yeah, just the last couple years.
Yeah. Last year, she called in because she couldn't get up here with the 101 closure due to the debris flow. So I just want to make one comment that we have met with our audit committee. Madam President and Kate Parker are on our audit committee, and we met, oh my gosh, sorry, Kate. So I apologize. So yes, we met back in December and went over the audit, and so now I will turn it over to Shiloh for her report.
Great. Thank you. I'll just take a few moments of your time, go through the results of our audit, and of course, if there's questions, I'm happy to take questions for you as well. As you know, we're presenting the June 30, 2018 audit report, and so our report starts on page 2. This is our independent auditor's report, the goal of which is to provide you with reasonable assurance regarding whether or not the financial statements presented are materially stated. I think this is the letter to the governing board. There's probably a second page. That's the one. There we go. And so as I mentioned, we're here to provide you with an opinion on the financial statements and whether they're materially stated. This report tonight is an unmodified opinion, so that's a clean report, and it does mean that as presented, we do believe the financial statements are materially stated. And just for reference, that's the highest level of assurance that we can provide you in an audit. So as I mentioned, it's considered a clean report. But in addition to that, on page 102, we actually provide you with 3 other reports bound in this entire document. The first of those is our report on internal controls over the financial reporting. And in this report, while we don't provide you an opinion on internal controls, during the course of our audit, we do evaluate internal controls, and if anything comes to our attention, we would report those out to you, either in the form of a, keep going up, 102. And there we go. And so either in the form of a significant deficiency or a material weakness, and so we're happy to report neither of those have occurred during the current audit, so the internal control report is considered a clean report. We do provide you a report on federal programs as well. This is
an opinion on compliance as well as an internal control report. The program subject to audit this year was your child nutrition program. And so that is a clean report. So unmodified opinion on compliance and no internal control issues. And last but not least is the state awards. And so we have multiple state programs that we're mandated to look at. And so this is a compliance report. It's an unmodified report. We had one finding specific to the instructional materials, which is a publication of the public hearing you have to have at the beginning of the year and the timing of that. There's no fiscal impact to it. However, CDE does dictate that we have to report out if that deadline wasn't met. And so that's what that finding is about, the details of which follow on page 105. So if there's specific questions, I can address them. The only other page that I really like to bring to your attention, just because I think it's actually a very good summary for you as board members to get a big picture of the district and where we're at and where we're going, page 87, which is your schedule of your financial trends. So the reason I like this page is because what it does is gives you an opportunity to look at 3 years all in one place from a high level. Gives you an opportunity to see where we've ended and whether or not we're meeting reserves. The budget information here, of course, was based on July 1 budget information, so that has since changed. You've gone through first interim and are close to probably your second interim, and so I'm sure those numbers look different today than they did then. So take that as you will, and just know that that could look a little different. But like I said, just a good place to see everything. You know, the district has done well staying in the black for the last 3 years. 2019 had some projected deficits, so I'm not sure where you stand with that today. But reserves are being met in all of the years, so that's also good to just be able to refer to. Now with that, the other page that you had up previously was the report, the communication letter that I addressed directly to you as the governing board. You know, this letter is important to us because what it does is it provides you an opportunity to hear from us regarding some things that you wouldn't see in the audit. We do talk about elements of the audit, but we also like to talk about things such as, did we have any disagreements with management? Did we have any difficulties completing the audit? You know, is management out there opinion shopping regarding accounting policies? And if we had issues with those types of items, we want to bring those to your attention. But we're happy to report that isn't the case. So that letter should read fairly standard with no alarming information for you. That's the district's audit. I can pause for some questions or comments.
Any comments, board members? Keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you also have then the your Proposition 39 audits. Now you have 4 of them. So preference as if I report them individually or as a whole?
These are our bond funds.
Yep. So as a whole is fine. I don't think we need to do individual.
Okay. So to sum these up, it's a financial and performance audit, so you get both pieces. The financial audit is similar to the district audit in the sense that we're providing you an opinion on the financial statements specific to each of the individual measures. All 4 of those opinions are unmodified, so as presented, those are materially stated financial statements. And there were no internal control findings related to any of the financial reporting for any of your bonds as well. So clean report on that. In relation to the performance audit, which is really what has the community interest regarding did we spend those dollars in accordance with the ballot and as approved by the voters. And so there were no exceptions in any of your 4 reports there. So those were all clean performance reports. No findings on compliance. Dan.
No comments?
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay. I just do have some comments about the process in general, and to appreciate that we did have a good audit committee meeting, and we had a very thorough conversation and lively, engaging conversation. And I want to certainly say thank you to Meg, Lacey, and Elena for the time that, getting an audit and a clean audit is no small feat. So I want to appreciate the efforts that they do day to day to make sure those things come out in the end, have a clean audit. The only other question thing that I wanted to just kind of focus on or just make a comment on is that our ASB accounts. I just want us to see us continue improving process to ensure that we have a much cleaner process with regards to that, because we are so very fortunate to have the donations coming in. We couldn't do the things that we could do without those, the support of the community. So I want us to see us continue to have a good and better process to make sure that they're cleaned up. And I want to recognize and thank the volunteers that are part of those accounts that keep those reconciled, but it's important that they be trained and understand the importance of making sure that we have a good place. And so I'd like to see that more improved as we go through in the year. So, Ms. Ford, did you have any comments from the meeting?
No, I only echo what you say. I thought it was completely thorough and well done, and our staff explained everything to us in a lot of detail, and your report reflects that, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chate. So in G2, report regarding dual language immersion in the Santa Barbara Unified, Dr. Ramirez and Dr. Lores Horton, you presenting.
Hi, good evening, Board President Sims Moten, Board. It's a pleasure to be here with you and discussing this topic. There is a slight modification to this particular slide, a bit different than you received, but we'll all highlight that for you when we arrive there. It's really around some of the immediate planning for this coming year. But before launching in, I'd just like to once again state from myself, for Ms. Larios Horton, what a pleasure it is to be able to present on this topic. It's one that has been long due, and I want to acknowledge that as the district continues to strive forward in building from the assets and culture that our students and families bring to us on a daily basis, it's really an important next step for us to bring this before you, already knowing that we've had some ongoing discussions with a few of the individuals and groups that are here with us tonight, which allows me another opportunity to kind of just send my acknowledgement to them as well. Tonight's report builds on the legacy within the community of Adelante Charter School, formerly Cesar Chavez, and that program, that school's use of language as a foundation for learning. So I know Dominic and David are here representing Adelante, so thank you for being here. I also want to acknowledge the participation and input and leadership of our DLAC as a whole, but specifically of our executive committee, who are here as well, and who've really demonstrated a great deal of effort and interest on their part to understand how we can bring language learning more robustly into the district. With that said, I will just highlight a couple of our main objectives, and those are to revisit, to give a broad but comprehensive view of bilingual education, but not just in the abstract, not just in terms of big shifts, but really locally based. I think it's important to recognize where we've been in order to help inform where we might go next. We also want to situate this report within a global, national, and state context, as well as, again, as something very locally defined here in Santa Barbara. Want to put forward what may already be obvious to some, but would be important for the entire community, which is identifying the benefits of biliteracy for our students, particularly as we head more into a global economy. And finally, get into and provide for the board just a roadmap, if you will, a sense of what our immediate next steps, knowing and recognizing that bringing in programming must be done with a lot of intentionality and hand in hand with those that are the most impacted or those who stand most to benefit from it. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Maria Larios Horton, who is our Director of EL and Parent Engagement Programs.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. Good evening, Madam President and Board. I'd like to first start with a look back to where our district has been in the past 20 years. Some of you may remember that it was a little over 20 years ago, in May of 1998, that our district made national news when it effectively dismantled bilingual education. I personally recall this vividly, as I was a para-educator at Franklin Elementary School and in my final semester of college studying to become a bilingual teacher. A mere month later, Proposition 227 passed with a 61% vote in our state, and it required California public schools to teach English learners in special classes that would be taught nearly all in English, and so it eliminated bilingual education. After the passage of Prop 227, the community responded with the start of a charter school by the name of Adelante Charter School, which has served, by the name of Cesar Chavez, and most recently Adelante Charter School, which has served the growing needs of families who wish to have access to dual language immersion programs. The elimination of bilingual education due to the passage of Prop 227 went against established research surrounding the benefits of multilingualism and biliteracy. The benefits of speaking two or more languages are ones known to many of us and include the ability to expand cultural knowledge and understanding, as well as enhanced cognitive abilities. We also see those benefits play out in the dispositions bilinguals have towards those who are different from them, as well as benefits related to career advancement and opportunities. In light of what we know about these benefits, our state began to shift away from Prop 227 and its philosophy regarding multilingualism. According to the Association of Two-Way and Dual Language Education, since 1998, when there were only 40 programs in our state, the number of DLI programs has grown to 459. In California alone, at a rate of about 10 programs a year, not to mention the over 2,000 programs across the nation in 46 states. In California, the significant shifts occurred or began in 2012. So since then, in 2012, California became the first nation to award the State Seal of Biliteracy to graduating seniors with demonstrated proficiency in two or more languages. Since then, 32 states have followed suit. In November of 2016, California voters approved Proposition 58, also known as the California Education for a Global Economy Initiative, which effectively repealed Proposition 227. The purpose of the California EDGE initiative is to ensure that all children in California public schools receive the highest quality education, master the English language, and access high-quality, innovative, and research-based language programs that prepare them to fully participate in a global economy. The California EDGE initiative authorizes school districts to establish language acquisition programs for both native and non-native English speakers. Then, most recently, in 2018, Superintendent Torlakson announced the Global California 2030 Initiative, which vastly expands the teaching of world languages and the number of students proficient in more than one language over the next 12 years. Through Global California 2030, the goal is to equip students with world language skills to better appreciate and more fully engage with the rich and diverse mixtures of cultures, heritages, and languages found in California and the world, while also preparing them to succeed in a global economy. Now, more locally, as Dr. Ramirez mentioned, we have received input from some of our stakeholders, particularly our local dual immersion charter school and our district English Learner Advisory Committee, about their interest in helping build and expand our DLI options for students. In May of 2018, our DLAC recommended that we explore the possibility of establishing a committee that would examine the feasibility of a dual language immersion program in English and Spanish, given that a large majority of our community is interested in this program. With that in mind, by focusing on strategic planning to bring biliteracy programs to the district, Santa Barbara Unified will begin to positively change academic outcomes for multilingual students and lead the way for other districts to transform their systems. A broad timeline of implementation has been developed, and I'll ask Dr. Ramirez to share this timeline with you.
So we wanted to offer the board an opportunity to weigh in, give us your opinion on a timeline that that begins to signal our intentions, not only in the expansion to the junior high space and potentially beyond into high school, but also our own district program in the elementary space. So you have more of this information in the narrative, but I'll speak to it more broadly, and of course invite any questions or comments along the way. Specifically, we'll start with elementary, and you see there in the 3-year window. The first thing that I'll highlight is that we're identifying a school location geographically on the west side. Partly due to the fact that Adelante really is serving the east side community. I think there's a way to serve in a complementary fashion. We wanted to also give ourselves time, because that is a change to programming. There will be some opinions and stakeholder input gathering opportunities that we'll have to engage in. We put a community survey there because we envision something that would look like a pathway through one of our schools, not necessarily a school conversion. I think there would be some definite things to consider in a full school conversion, not the least of which is that our schools have attendance boundaries that we would have to work through and just acknowledge from the very outset. We're envisioning the 1920 year as being an opportunity to elicit feedback, try to situate the program in the right setting, one where that would be supportive, that would be accessible, where there's the right alignment of leadership, of parental support, family support, as well as receptivity and support from the staff as well. We're identifying the 2020-21 school year as a planning, and we'll talk a bit more of what that might entail. And we're envisioning a launch of a TK and K potentially opportunity that would then grow as the students ease into and matriculate from one grade to the next. In terms of our junior high, we've started this preliminary conversation with Santa Barbara Junior High School. It's the one that geographically makes a great deal of sense. It's situated on the east side. It would have Adelante to serve in a feeder pattern. We're looking at this coming year as being that planning year with a onboarding of 7th grade and into 8th grade in the subsequent years. I'll speak in a moment to some of the how we gauge and how we work through community interest, and I'll speak to that in just a moment. We wanted to highlight high school here, and it's listed as exploratory because we acknowledge that in the high school space there are quite a few offerings and different choices that families and students make relative to academies, CTE pathways. You heard students speak to the opportunities that exist and those which students undertake and families undertake. We also recognize that there are some different logistical challenges to work through, not the least of which is, and even including junior high, is student agency, student choice, student voice. What do students now want for themselves? And and maybe it's oversimplifying the point, but oftentimes in elementary, it's largely the adults making decisions about students. But by the time that they get to be secondary students, we're really looking at making decisions with students and with kids. And so the dynamics definitely shift as students come into junior high and high school. So that's a broad picture of a proposed timeline that we might undertake. Just speaking more specifically to community interest, we're envisioning a community interest as early as this spring. We recognize that Adelante has, and for many years has had, interest, and so we know that there is already an audience that would love to have this opportunity to engage through 7th and 8th grade. We also have an open question around whether there would be demand coming from other quarters and how that might play into a pathway. In the elementary, as I mentioned earlier, we envision this potentially as a program of choice, which means that there would be opportunities for a broader subset of our community, in spite of the fact that it might reside on the west side. So we will have to think through how to message that in such a way that we're just gathering information about where and how and just how much interest exists out in the community. With the elementary specifically, recognizing that we would have to make some decisions around the starting point. So parents, we don't want to mislead or confuse parents about the immediacy with which a program might be available and ready to start receiving and enrolling students. As I mentioned earlier, this is where there is a slight variation. We wanted to really expand on a few things. The slide deck that was on the board packet specifically mentions junior high school. We wanted to really just give the board a broader view around planning and support for the 1920 school year. You saw it identified a bit on the timeline. I'll speak to two things. One is we've as staff working with some of our schools and knowing that there is quite a bit of a lift, if you will, from the outset in starting any new program. One of the considerations that we have is for a teacher in residence. Specific to the elementary, it could be somebody who could generate, who could also serve to generate interest, understand, and bring families along, and then ultimately perhaps serve as, ideally serve in that, as that classroom teacher, a way to liaise families and bring them into a program so that it's not just a program, it really starts setting the tone and building community and building clarity around what the program's aims and goals might be. We looked at what that might mean for secondary, and we're still really in that sense-making phase because the program design we've discussed very, very preliminarily with Adelante would call for a focus around the humanities, English language arts, and social studies as being starting points in 7th and 8th grade. And finally, we also know and recognize that there will be some consultant support. We don't know exactly what that would look like at this moment. We just know that there are many experts out in the field who would be more than willing and capable to support us and to thought partner with us. We've also extended an opportunity for Adelante to have opinion, and we've had some preliminary discussions with them around what a program design might entail. So as you can gather, we really want to make this an intentional process, one that allows us enough lead time, and that is also fiscally responsible to the rest of our programs that are, of course, of tremendous importance to the audiences and students they serve. With that, we'd like to just afford the board, any opportunity to ask us questions, provide us with commentary and guidance as we move forward.
Comments, board. Ms. Munoz.
Certainly make a comment, and this is very significant to me as a board member and as a community activist here, and recognizing the participation of all our parents with the ELAC and also with Adelante School and our students who are so important to us. very much the motivation of why I'm here. I think it's so important for our students to learn to that they have that support of us to read, write, learn about their culture, to be leaders of our society, and also to continue with their participation and their involvement on the leadership that we can see with our students, like with the ethnic studies, for example. And combining that, I think, will very much set our school district apart to have this happen now. I'm very aware of '98 and how, things were at that time, and I think this is our opportunity to make a difference and to plan this out as well as possible.
Ms. Ford.
Thank you. This is like a walk down memory lane for me because over 40 years ago, I got my credential in bilingual education and have seen this state go up and down and up and down. So how exciting it is to consider to expand this and make this a really big focus of this district, but also it's quite daunting to me. I think it's a huge job and we'll need lots of help on it. I do have a question. You mentioned something about a risk or a difficulty because of attendance boundaries. What did you mean by that?
I'm sorry if I couch it as a risk. It's simply that our schools have attendance boundaries, and in an entire school conversion, some of that choice then gets made for parents in that particular attendance boundary. And some of our schools, in particular our small elementary schools, we're really talking about 2 classrooms that really matriculate all the way on through. So we just want to be very sensitive to the fact that this is an option that not all parents will necessarily immediately understand or gravitate toward. If down the line there is a desire to move more fully into what you would consider a wall-to-wall dual language school, that opportunity would certainly be available.
So in your mind, is there a possibility that it's a little bit like an academy?
We envision it as a pathway.
A school within a school?
A pathway that would run through from TK on through. There are some local examples of that, one of which is over at in CARP in Catalina. There's one program designed that way. This is part of why we just want to really be thoughtful about this process because there are many different expressions of how a model might work.
And finally, I wonder if, because this is a public meeting and some of us have an understanding of we think we have an understanding of what dual language immersion is, and probably in this room there are 15 different versions of it. So the title says broad vision. So what's your broad vision for what it would look like? If you walk into this classroom and what's happening?
In a classroom like this, depending on what grade level I'm looking at, I would be looking at a high level of linguistic interaction among students, sense making, with a high degree of academic rigor as well. And what we would expect to see in many classrooms with that added component of how language interplays and how culture begins to be a foundation for how students learn into and from the content, how they engage, how they bring to it. And there would be a good balance of students that have just very different life experiences in order to be able to work together in community. That's my personal broad vision, but as you said, other visions would have to be brought to bear in order to really bring this bring it forward in a more comprehensive way.
Ms. Capps?
Thank you. I think this is an important day for this school district, and I really appreciate Ms. Larios Horton for giving us that history. It caused me, I think we all remember, I was on a campaign in 1998 and how divisive that was just 4 years after Prop 197 was passed, and just this anti-immigrant sentiment, unfortunately, in California. And now we're moving, it's just such a different, such a different scenario now with Tom Torlakson last year just making this huge challenge. Part of that, since you had it in the in your presentation, I went to look up his vision, and a key thing, a number that stood out for me is that he challenged for there to be, you said 450 programs last year, but by 2030 to be 1,600. So I would hope that ours can be added to that. Of any place in the state, Santa Barbara should have a good chunk of those new additional programs in my mind. So, and I really want to thank Adelante. I think we're in this conversation completely because when everybody was moving away from this, including this district, as you pointed out, by making news 20 years ago, the parents behind then Cesar Chavez and now Adelante kept this going. And when you talk about broad vision, I agree with Ms. Ford that we need to know more, but we also need to look at Adelante. And maybe as a board, we can spend some more time there. I have to some degree, and I know that the intention is to involve the parents and the teachers and the superintendent of Adelante in the vision, because again, they've tried and true, ups and downs, a very challenging thing, especially to do it as a charter. And I also, again, recognizing that Prop 58 passed so overwhelmingly in California, I was curious just to see how it did here, and it did even better than the state, just slightly, 74%. So a lot of things that this school district takes on, we're not exactly numerically sure is a priority, but we know this is a priority for this county and for this area. And so I think the more that the board can be supportive of this process and engage with you because I understand from an educator perspective that this is a daunting task, but I want to be as fully supportive as possible because of its great importance. One small thing I read in looking into the many benefits of dual language immersion is that it also has been shown to slow the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia. So I hadn't read that in before. So that's just another of all the many benefits for bilingual and dual language immersion. There's that. So again, thank you to the staff for bringing this forward, and thank you to Adelante for paving the way.
Thank you. I would just add one final comment. I echo the comments of my board members. Just as part of First Five, this isn't lost on the dual language and the importance of it being early in the years. And so First Five California has put some dollars forward toward this. And actually, we were chosen as a random county to look at dual language immersion. So I'll talk further about that, off the time today, but willing to work and fully support this idea with regards to the dual language immersion. So it's not lost on the early years either. So I look forward to working with you on that as well. Wonderful. Additional comments?
Let me add a comment to the question about attendance boundaries for a school. So the way it would probably play out is we'd have an elementary school with its current attendance boundary, but that wouldn't be broad enough to pool or attract enough students to build that cohort. So it would be now a district school of choice embedded with a school with an attendance boundary. So it's really a hybrid. It'd be like Santa Barbara Community Academy, pull students from across the district within a school that has its defined boundary. And that we'll have to work through that. And that's what the community survey is going to be really important about. And what will be different of us versus Adelante, as a charter school, they draw students from anywhere, Ventura County. We will be pulling students from our elementary district boundary.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Okay, so G3, the mission, vision, core values for Santa Barbara Unified School District. Mr. Matsuoka.
We would like to bring this back. It's almost a rereading for the board. We have Ms. Ford and Ms. Munoz, who were not part of the board when we took several reviews of the mission, vision, core value statements. Ms. Reed has certainly seen it and weighed in on it. The reason why we're bringing this to you tonight is we're on the verge of the LCAP process. And then we have the SIPSA process unfolding at the schools. And we're actually starting to get questions. What mission statement do we put on our documents? And I completely, firmly believe it's the board that should approve a mission statement for a school district. And we haven't taken that step yet. You will see in a lot of websites, a lot of lobbies of companies, you'll see mission statements, you'll see vision statements. Sometimes you'll see all three, mission, vision, core values. They each have a place in the guidance of an organization. So we're going to go through each of those and just give the board a chance to offer commentary. Before we do the mission statement, we showed a video, it was back in the fall, and it was about how to create a mission statement. I'm looking at Ms. Capps and Wendy Sims-Moten. It's about 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I think it'd be worth showing again. It's pretty entertaining. And Mr. Rouse, I believe, found it. I couldn't find it. And apologize for the title, but it's actually a really good video. Writing a mission statement that doesn't suck. And this is by the author Dan Heath, who's part of the brothers, Chip and Dan Heath. I've read every one of their books. They're just great thinkers and writers. So let's show this short video, and then we'll come back to our mission statement.
Why most mission statements are so terrible. So let's say that you own a chain of pizza parlors, and maybe you have a mission statement that you've drafted, and it says something like, our mission is to serve the tastiest damn pizza in Wake County. Well, that's pretty good, if you ask me. If I was one of your employees, I could get excited about that. But here's where things go off the rails. So you invite all your colleagues to come join you and to help you wordsmith this thing. And you all sit around a table, and right in front of your eyes, a transformation happens. All of these people who you like and respect suddenly become 10th grade English teachers and begin to nitpick every word of this thing.
Hey, I really like the word present better than serve. It has a nice resonance.
We obviously can't say damn. And why limit ourselves to Wake County? Hey guys, I know our pizza is good, but what about the calzones and salads? Why don't we just say highest quality Italian food? Our Greek salad isn't Italian. We haven't even talked about the atmosphere yet, the big comfy booths and the kids' birthday parties and all that.
Yeah, great point. You know what we're really doing here? We're providing a family entertainment solution.
Yeah, solution. Nailed it. And everyone's excited now. You're almost there. And then Steve at the end of the table pipes up. Listen, guys, we haven't mentioned anything about integrity. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, integrity. And is anyone at the table going to rise up and go to the mat against the word integrity being in the mission statement? Doubtful. So, presto, that's in. And now here's your new and improved mission statement. Our mission is to present with integrity the highest quality entertainment solutions to families. I know this is a little bit silly, but you gotta admit, this is what 99% of mission statements sound like. And now you know why. There's this cycle of making words more ambiguous and more fancy until all of the meaning leaches out. Here's how to avoid that. 2 tips. Number 1, use concrete language. Great example comes from this fast-growing small business called Sonic Biz. Check this out. We want to help musicians get gigs and promoters book the right band. We're a bunch of people who think that music can truly change the world and make it smaller and better. I love that. I think it gives you a picture of exactly what they do and also gives you a hint why they might want to do that. And that brings us to the second point, which is talk about the why. You know, most mission statements are really long on statement and really short on mission. And the whole point of this is to talk about why you're doing what you do. You've got to talk about what makes you care. So let me give you a famous example from Johnson & Johnson. This is the first line in their credo. Our first responsibility is to the doctors, nurses, and patients, mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services. Well, all right. I mean, that's something that you could get out of bed to go do. Now contrast that with the guiding principles of ExxonMobil. Did you feel that? A little part of your soul just died reading that mission statement. So now you've seen why bad mission statements happen to good people, and I've given you 2 tips for avoiding that fate. If you're interested in learning more about writing a great mission statement, go to fastcompany.com/heat. And in the meantime, I want to challenge you to do the impossible. Create a mission statement that says something. And one final hint, if it includes the word solution in it, you're not there yet. Thanks for watching.
The journey we've been on with the mission statement is, as we look at the one that's behind me, and I can see the counterpart through the window in the lobby, there's an identical plaque over there. Anytime I've asked our employees, can you quote our mission statement, it usually comes back, every child, every chance, every day, which is actually a motto It's not even core value category. And when I put this in front of people and ask them to read it, you actually have to read along with it because it's so long. I mean, it's really the opposite of a memorable statement. It's just too awkward. I don't think it's actually, every word in there is good to great, but it's not memorable. Some of the things that I've learned from the Heath brothers from the book Made to Stick, which is a fantastic book. I think one of the principles is keep it simple. That's the first chapter. And then the word concrete versus abstract. And I think we in education are so fond of abstract words and ideas. What I would say to the mission statement, we have test-driven this in a lot of settings. We listed some of them. I think the opening school rally where everybody heard it at once. The State of the Union message that I delivered at the Vic Theater, which was recorded and has been replayed. I think what I've heard as far as feedback is sometimes immediate resonance, sometimes questions, sometimes puzzlement. But as it is unfolded out there, here's what I don't hear is, well, that doesn't make sense, or that's such a bad mission statement. I think the feedback that we have received, that I have received is, you know what, that makes sense, and it also guides our work. I think everybody in the organization can look at that and say, I see my role and my part in helping prepare students for a world that is yet to be created. If you think of the last report we just heard, this is a global community, and what I'm so excited about dual language immersion is, yes, we should be learning Chinese, but I would say the dominant language besides English is Spanish in Europe, South America, Central America. If our students were equipped with Spanish, they are equipped to deal with really half the world. So, mission statement, there it is. I think we'll go through the different parts and then let the board respond with questions and comments about all of it. The vision statement is the most recent, and this has been a work in progress a lot in the Ed Services team, and it is more tactical. I mean, we admit it is, it's not as fancy as the mission statement, but it is the nuts and bolts of what we are doing and leading in our schools. And it really aligns with college career readiness. And so Sean Carey and Raul Ramirez have been crafting this, and I'm going to invite Ms. Carey up to the podium just to add some of the history about this. This has been also, I think, a 12-month development cycle.
Yep. Good evening again, board. It's hard not to kind of riff off the video we just saw. This was originally a longer statement. We had phrases like students demonstrate the ability to, because we really recognize and place value on being able to measure what the outcomes are for students. But in the end, we just felt, really from field testing, from using this phrase, read, reason, communicate again and again, that it was what was sticking with folks. Its very origins had to do with the fact that we looked at what all of our school sites were doing, TK-12, and we looked at what we're pushing them to do more and more that is common, which is really not so much a specific what as it is a how. And you are coming to know, and we will continue to keep informing you about the process that schools are using through school leadership teams to engage in a cycle of inquiry that is not static, that is always dynamic, and that is always examining problems of practice, experimenting with practice, teaching practices to go at those areas of most critical student need, and then measuring whether or not that's successful, but then revising and redesigning the instructional approach. So it's really about engaging that process. But what was common, whatever is happening in specific and at whatever grade span it's happening, is we saw these themes of reading. And we've had lots of presentations and learning around reading and literacy as a board and as a district team. But that reading is not enough. That reading is just really a foundational skill for being able to reason And we don't know that you can read, and we certainly can't tell if you can reason well if you're not able to communicate that reasoning through various forms. So we went back and forth a lot about communicate. Some people really wanted the word writing in there as explicitly called out, but we felt that the broadest and actually most compelling way to convey what we really want to see is various forms of communication. So that is lots of times going to be writing, but it's also going to be portfolios. It's also going to be, as we heard tonight, an oral presentation, that there are various kinds of texts that aren't just traditional text, even when it comes to things like reading. So this vision statement, and is specifically kind of trimming it down to the essential verbs of read, reason, communicate, we found was the right size umbrella for holding every single school site's site-specific identified area of instructional focus. None of them were left out, and we're talking about, again, TK6 system and 712 part of our system, and yet we all have a vested interest in our articulated efforts, so at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is that students have as many options before them as they can, and that's what we're calling out with the college career readiness. And we found that teachers, no matter what the grade span, really were in support of that and buy into that. So that's a little bit about both the origins of the statement and how over time it's kind of field tested, how it's done out in the field, and how it's really kind of honed into this succinct statement that calls out the ultimate end goal, that has the why in it, as we just saw in the video, but with a strong emphasis on read, reason, communicate.
And the last part about the core values, it was made very clear to me as part of my onboarding process as a new superintendent that there was initiative fatigue. There was just a lot going on in Santa Barbara Unified. And it was our first cabinet retreat where we discovered that there were 22 strategic plans that were in motion. And so what we did is we did a group analysis of all that, and we distilled it down into these 3 domains, which was clearly equity was a huge part of the history of our district. How do we use data? I mean, there's a lot of conversations about data, so it's how do we evaluate our work? And then there's a lot of efforts around the professional growth of our teachers. And it really fit into these 3 categories. And so I shared these at my first all district rally, and just as guiding principles. I didn't intend for these to be core value statements, but it is stuck. People remember them. Sometimes teachers will come up to me and recite these 3 statements. And so what I've seen emerge is these really are core value statements. And you could have a lot of core value statements. I believe that these 3 have been received. I like the word, it's been field tested. And these have been with us now for 2.5 years. And I think people remember them. I think you can remember equity, improving practices, evaluating your work. The mission statement, I think people can remember that. You'll have to remember the read, reason, and communicate, but we walk around with it all the time now. So we offer these up for your review, feedback, consideration. We really are at the point of wanting to populate important documents, so welcome your questions and comments.
Board comments? Ms. Ford.
If we could go back to the vision statement. Ms. Carey, I wonder if some of the conversation that you have had phrased the vision statement in terms of what we would do rather than what our customers would do. And so did you consciously make a decision to only describe what students do rather than something to the effect of we will create, foster, fund, and implement an educational program where students read, reason, and communicate?
That's an excellent question, and I would invite anybody else who's been part of the process to share their observations. Mine would be that because this really was something where we were looking at what sites were saying that they felt were the most critical things to focus their work, we just observed that all of their statements were, we want to see students are doing this, we want to see students are doing that. We are measuring our success in terms of whether or not students are successful. So that's the theme we saw both, I would say, kind of practically, but then also kind of culturally. That was what was emerging from all of our various sites' work, and that's what we were trying to capture.
If I could offer up a thought just on that particular vision statement, I think what you would find over the last couple of years is that one of the ways in which we have tried to engage through our school leadership teams primarily is in talking about what we as professionals, as staff, want to see, for our students, and that's where these statements are really very much about what students will be able to do, because we wanted to shift the narrative from what a principal would somehow influence staff, or staff would ask of leadership, and vice versa, to turn it to what are we collectively doing to ensure that students are able to really find these not just skills but aptitudes and abilities and refine them over time. So what this is missing is all of the complementary actions and ideas around that, but this really is I would say a synthesis of what many of those schools, elementaries, junior highs, and high schools have put forward. The other component to this is that over the last year or so, we've also developed a district leadership team with representation from different principal groups or different principals, elementary, junior high, and high school, as well as district staff, and more recently, teachers as well, teacher leaders. We're hoping to use that as a vehicle to get really an opinion and thoughts across, a wider swath of our district.
I have recollections of in several iterations where when we would test vision language that was focused on the teachers and their actions, it started to divide the attention of what the vision statement was calling out, because then you have to think about, okay, is this statement focused on the adults in the system or the students in the system? And you could write a vision statement that addresses both, but you're going to get long. And so I think where we've landed is, to Dr. Ramirez's point, if we're pulling this off in students, then we must have made a difference in the minds and the skills of our adults and teachers.
Ms. Kemps.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for keeping us apprised as this has moved forward. I appreciate it, and I like the process that's gone into it. I have a couple compliments. I think that you have achieved something that is eye-catching and makes people stop and think with the mission statement. I admit when I first heard it, it's different, and that's important because it's short and because it's provocative. What I think would be good, and the way that I've always approached this, and these are the thorniest things to take on, redoing these things, and I've been part of wordsmithing these in many different capacities, but I've always thought of the vision statement as sort of unpacking the mission statement, and I don't quite see that here, but that could just be a different approach. And so I would just suggest, with the mission statement being this provocative in a good way, I like it, but it would be helpful to have some examples, not necessarily ones that are going to be on letterhead or anything, but just, we all should be able to come up with examples, but what does that mean exactly? Is sort of, because it is rather, it's provocative, what does that mean exactly? I think I don't want to even choose because I will say not everything, but the Engineering Academy, or the fact we have ethnic studies, or whatever it could be, but ways in which we're really thinking about what's the future that's yet to be created and how are we leading. So I would just want to, as an ambassador to the district, have a few of what you see as shining examples of how we're really succeeding in those areas of preparing for the future. That's my suggestion. Secondly, I love the vision statement. I really focus on the word reason. What a simple way to encompass such an important achievement for students. What caught me a little bit is the jargony of college career readiness, and that's kind of a nitpicky observation, but I try to get us away from jargon, especially on things like that. So I've been in this job now for a couple years. I don't know how jargony it is anymore because I hear it so much, but I don't know if that really translates to a parent, if they would know that their child is college ready, maybe just successful or pursue their dreams, or maybe that's too wishy-washy and maybe that you need that grounding. But I just want to flag that as a reaction, not something I feel strongly about, but it's a little jargony, especially with the slash and all that. So anyway, but I'm really happy and pleased with the direction. Those are just two suggestions I have, but I'm very supportive of this direction.
I would just add that to your point, Mr. Matsuoka, about questioning and puzzlement. I was there in both places initially when we brought on, but as I began to really read it, and with regards to the mission statement, it really is easy to keep you focused on why you're doing exactly what you're doing. So if we were to get off focus on a conversation or we go the wrong way, is this conversation serving us, preparing our students for a world for yet to be created? So it's able to keep you focused and be able to say that. And it's been field tested now because I was at a county board meeting and we were just looking at this very thing, how are we going to do our work differently? And they were looking at changing the mission and seeing how everybody, regardless of their individual departmental missions, how it led up into the larger county. And nobody could remember it really, I don't know. And so, of course, I stood up proudly and said that and admitted that it was easy to do and got a lot of feedback on it. So it's really something that people resonate outside of us in terms of that. This preparing is so simple. It was really clear about what you're trying to achieve in your mission. And so I support the direction they're going and appreciate the work that's going into it as well. And for me, starting with the mission statement of what are we doing. So the second statement is that in order for us to prepare our students to be prepared for a world that's yet to be created, they got to be able to read and reason and communicate. So it's linking all of those things for me. And then how do we achieve those? Through equity, improvement, and balancing our work. So those are just really steps to be a better ambassador to what is it that we're doing, and to be able to explain each one and how they're connected. So I appreciate it as well. I wasn't sure I agree with Ms. Katz with regards to the college career, but that's just it's not something significant in that way, but I really do like the way they're able to do flow very easily together. So. Ms. Ward.
Thanks. I was trying to figure out where the dissonance is for me, and I just did, thanks to you two, so thank you. What it is for me, and I'd love for you guys just to think about it as you go forward to really fine-tune this, is that for me, when you say to prepare for a world that's yet to be created, you're actually in the vision saying that it's college and career readiness. And I don't know if we want to be that specific. More to your point, do we want it to be something bigger, broader, more lofty than college and career readiness? Because a world that's yet to be created isn't necessarily college and career readiness. Mm-hmm. So that's all I would put out there.
I really appreciate that idea. I think we've been living in this, the new accountability system for our high schools is it's going to be so much on our annual reviews, college career readiness, but given some of the feedback, it is educationese, and it is
It's grammatically clunky too, I agree.
It is, the height, it's secondary. I think what I would offer to us as leaders is, I think we're really close with the vision statement, but I think we will keep in mind, let's keep field testing some replacements for the ending of that are broader, that aren't quite so clunky. Mm-hmm. Get the hyphen out, the slash out of the way. That's good feedback. Really good feedback. Yeah.
We like the read, reason, communicate, though. I heard that too. Okay, good.
Any other comments?
Ms. Munoz?
No, I love the first part, and I'm trying to trying to think of options for even from achieve on, but I definitely love, read, reason, and communicate. I was going to say achieve success, but that wouldn't do it for me. But I love the first part, students read, reason, and communicate. I love.
There may be a way to capture what we know is true, that a lot of the jobs that our students will occupy aren't invented yet. So, you know, there might be a succinct way to capture something like that and still convey it's about preparing them for productive citizenry later, but, you know, not in that jargony way.
Yeah. All right, we will bring this back as an approval item. I think we're going to, for now, leave the college career readiness language with the mind to find a synonym replacement over time. And what's really helpful is then from district to schools, we can start to populate the planning documents that are moving forward. So appreciate your comments and feedback.
Okay, so we've come to the, thank you, Ms. Carey. So we've come to our, in recognizing that we're going to have to return to discuss some items in closed sessions, I just want to go, let's look at coming events, if there are coming events that you'd like to announce that are coming. Any from staff that we recognize? Okay. Future agenda items we want to put on the agenda. Okay. All right. And our next meeting is Tuesday, February 12, 2019. So we will close this meeting and adjourn to closed session, return back to closed session to discuss items B7, 8, and 9. Thank you. We're not adjourned yet. We're just going to adjourn to the closed session. Yes.